But the story that he has to tell, you're going to probably change your mind a little bit about this man when he talks about his sister. This, once again, because of World Purple Day and our support of Epilepsy Canada, but this story told by Brett Hundley, you may not have some dry eyes after this, because this is an emotional tale about his sister who has epilepsy.
Sometimes it's hard to go back and relive memories that you don't try to relive. When she first had her first seizure, we were getting ready for school, 11 years old, and I was 10. You always remember the first boom you hear. We had no idea what was going on, and you can go around the corner and she's in a seizure, a grandma seizure. I had no idea what epilepsy was, what a seizure was. All I could do was pray, because that's all I knew how to do at that point. You feel helpless. When you have a seizure, you don't know how you're gonna fall, you don't know where you're gonna be at, or what your body is gonna do. Her shoulders have been dislocated over 100 times. Every time she'd have a seizure, she would essentially dislocate her shoulder, right or left, or both. Having to be carted away every single time to have her shoulder back in place. You're spending holidays at the hospital. You're spending days, hours at a time at the hospital. Christmas, Thanksgiving, you could probably name any holiday, and we've been in the hospital. To see her go from a major athlete to having to start taking tons of medication, 8, 9, she takes 10 a day, still to this day, 10. To see how that interacts with your body and with your mind, it's not easy. Kids used to laugh. Used to laugh at her. Some people just don't know. She's went through more than I could ever imagine. One of the strongest people I've ever seen. It's not gonna stop her. It didn't. And, her story is a great story to be told. She hasn't had a seizure in a long time. So it's a lot easier to go about your daily lives, not worrying about a phone call you're gonna get. It's nice to be able to just call her and be like, hey, Paris, what's up? She's flourishing, now raising Elijah, being a mom. She's enjoying life, seizure-free. And, she's really found her way. For me, being blessed to play at Lambeau Field, I have an opportunity to talk to and touch many lives. I understand the struggles that you're going through, the siblings, everybody, the loved ones who have to watch this stuff. Sometimes they think they're alone in this fight. I'm able to tell them, I understand. I've witnessed it from my sister. And at the end of the day, I can tell them, this won't stop you. It's just there's an obstacle now, and you just got to get over it.
You ready?
I can officially say I'm an ambassador to Athletes versus Epilepsy. There's a lot that I want to do to be able to use my platform to speak to others, to be able to get the word out. This is epilepsy. This is something that we're fighting for.
That is just an unbelievable story. That was Brett Hundley at that time talking about his sister. Today it is a World Purple Day, and of course our good friends from Epilepsy Canada, who we met upon Jay contacting us and going out to a golf tournament in the name of his son, who fights epilepsy on literally a minute-by-minute basis. And I think we start to, Dave and I understand, and as parents, it's sometimes really, really hard to hear what Jay and his family go through. I guess I also was naive to the fact that in order for them to sometimes track what the disease actually does, they need to induce seizures. So therefore, the things that are triggering mechanisms like strobe lights or lack of sleep, all these things that would trigger, they do it on purpose so they can survey what goes on during a seizure. And when you look at Aiden, who's just the cutest little kid, I could not imagine. It is a little heartbreaking, but this also is another example of those who refuse to quit, those who continue to fight, and that's why we're a part of Epilepsy Canada. It's been probably, I think, it doesn't matter, Dave, what we have done. This is the most significant thing, I think, in our lives that we've done so far, and we need to do so much more for it. So we're appreciative that you're watching us here today, that Jay and Gary are coming in. Once again, World Purple Day. Text the word CURE to 30333 to donate either $10, $20, or $25 to Epilepsy Canada. And now we go to our good friend, Jay Barker. Jay, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having
Oh, let me just do that. Okay.
Am I on now?
Yeah, you're on now.
All right.
It's
Thanks
very
for
sophisticated.
having me.
So sophisticated here. And, of course, Gary, just make sure you're nice and close to that thing. The president of Epilepsy Canada.
Good morning, and thank you very much.
Okay, is that thing? Oh, you might have to smack the mic. Or how does that work there, roast beef? Is it this way? Try it again.
That works.
Thank you. Good morning. Good
There-
morning, Mike. Thanks very
There
much.
we go.
for
We,
having me.
There we go.
this is the first time we've actually had 4 microphones going.
Yeah, we don't usually do this, guys. This
Yeah.
is a special occasion, but you
Except
guys
when
are
the
definitely worth it.
except when the cheerleaders came in, but somehow we didn't really care about the microphones.
No, we didn't. Was there a microphone?
Is this on?
Yeah, isn't that? Yeah, they're going. That's not how we talked. Guys, today is World Purple Day, and Jay, I remember you were texting whoever ran like the CN Tower, and they'd put some colors up for something. You say, hey, today I guess was it November? Was it Epilepsy Month or something? You said, well, how about purple for the CN Tower?
Yeah, that was actually Toronto Pearson, the
Oh.
tower that they have at the
Yep.
airport, and having the connection at the airport with my job. I had asked them because they put different colors up for different events or things that were going on.
Makes
I
sense,
said,
yep.
March Epilepsy Awareness Month. Why not on March 26th, Purple Day? You put that up, so we'll see if they do that tonight.
Because
Make sure you take a picture of it and tweet it out too.
Absolutely,
So.
absolutely.
No, when I first met you, Jay, I think you told me you were the president of Air Canada or you invented Air Canada.
Close.
And I believe none
Very
of those things are
close.
true, actually.
I don't even know if you listen to me when I talk, but I'm a director of the hub advancement, whatever that means, at Toronto Airport. Far from the president.
Well, the reason that you're here today on World Purple Day, I know a lot of people follow, like when Dave and I would retweet about some of the issues that Aiden goes through. And Gary, I think that, and again, the more I look at things and research them, and I'm always stunned by, it seemingly every month something I find out about Epilepsy Canada. But when you think of all the other agencies and foundations, it's when they got started, 1920, 1966, that's it?
Yes, a long time ago. So, but that's
Well, not that long. When he's 66, is not that old.
51 years. So, which is great. So we've got a history with our organization, and our organization has been dedicated to raising monies for research. Our objective is to find a cure someday. That's our objective.
Because people, ask me sometimes, which is, I understand they'll see it on when Dave and I tweet about stuff. But when they ask about a cure, well, currently as we stand right now, there is no cure.
There is no cure today, and that's our goal. So as Jay knows, there are 3 dimensions within epilepsy. 70% of us, and I'll say us because I'm a sufferer. I was diagnosed when I was 30 years old, and so I'm a fortunate one. I'm someone whose seizures are controlled using medication, and I'm very, very lucky in that way. 30%, though, of people diagnosed with epilepsy, their seizures are not controlled by medication, and Jason Aiden is in that category. Mm-hmm. And yet, approximately 2% of those with epilepsy will die. They'll die from SUDEP, sudden unexplained death from epilepsy, and that's even more tragic. And this year, 9,000 families will wake up and find a new word, SUDEP, not understanding that a seizure could cause death. So many people don't know that that's the tragedy, ultimately the tragedy. For me, people see me and they think I look normal, and I am almost normal. But I live and I'm able to live with my condition. I had to change my lifestyle, but I'm okay. But people like Aiden and Aiden's case really is significant for me. And then I watched Jay and his wife and how they manage themselves and their family. It's not just the child living with epilepsy, it's the parents that have to manage that and what they have to go through. And that's significant. Well, it changes their life as well as their child's life.
When we talk about research and we welcome everybody to text the number and give to Epilepsy Canada, how close is the research right now? Is there any update on what they're working on exactly or how they're trying to attain the ultimate goal? These sort of things just don't happen in a day, in a week, in a year, or anything like that. But could you give us any kind of update on how everything is progressing in the right manner?
Sure. There are some great things happening, and even locally in Toronto with some great research. But there's seizure surgery, mm-hmm. and technology is making that easier. So if the physician can find the focal point of where the seizure begins, then they can go in and remove that from the brain. And we've seen a lot of success in seizure surgery. So that's and then we need new technologies to really pinpoint where that seizure is starting from. And then in addition to that, there's research happening in Toronto around early detection, and then if you can detect it, then can you then eradicate it by sending electrical current to
Right.
that spot? And those are happening today in Toronto at the Toronto Western Hospital through Dr. Peter Carlin, who's one of our key researchers. And then there's research being done at McGill and then University of Montreal. Some outstanding
That's good.
opportunities. Yes.
Let me ask you this, because when Mike and I did this golf tournament, and arguably it was probably one of the greatest things we did last year
Totally.
as a group here, the number one thing I had friends, and I'll ask both of you about this. The number one thing I had friends asking me is, how do you find out if you have epilepsy, or what were the warning signs, or are there warning signs, or is there a test? Is there, there was, because there is pure ignorance of not knowing. You don't know how this happens or why it happens. Is there anything you could do to answer those sort of questions for people that I've been asking, and I didn't have the answer to it.
Yeah.
Can I answer that
for
first?
sure.
Well, let's use myself as a case study. I had seizures for 10 years before it was finally diagnosed. When I was 20 years old, I was sitting in my girlfriend's kitchen. We were having breakfast in the morning. Everyone left after breakfast to go do whatever they're doing. I was staying at the table. I was reading the newspaper, and suddenly I'm on the floor. I wake up, and here I am on the floor. I don't know how long I've been there.
Yeah.
People come back to the kitchen, so everyone thought I fainted. Almost periodically, every 2 years, I'd have another event. And I had an aura. I would have a visual dream, a deja vu dream. I knew something was happening, and then I would have a seizure. But because no one
Before
saw
you had
me-
the seizure, you went through this process of having this thought?
Yes, I had a deja vu dream.
Wow.
Oh
Dream
my
sequence.
God.
So, and most people have some sort of aura prior to. And I had about 30 or 40 seconds to get to the floor and prepare myself. So it wasn't until I was 30 and I came back from a trip to Dallas, and I was attending a business meeting in the morning, that I actually fell and hit my head on the desk, and then the staff took me to the hospital, Mount Sinai. I had 2 more seizures on the way down to the hospital, and they were witnessed by someone. And that was when it was finally detected. But 10 years I had.
That's a long time, Gary.
Yes, it was. And so finally diagnosed, and then was given medication, and now I'm seizure-free.
Is that something you hid? Do people with epilepsy hide things?
Well, that's a good question, Mike. And I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
When I was diagnosed, I didn't tell anyone. I told other than my immediate family. I was very ambitious, a young man, wanted to go places in my career, and so therefore I didn't want anybody to know I had limitations. So it wasn't until 25 years later, when I finally sent a note to Epilepsy Canada saying I wanted to help, did I actually come out and tell people I was epileptic.
Now, for you, Jay, and it's always hard to hear your story at times, just because it affects Dave and I and anyone who would hear it. But if you have a child at some point with all the things that he went through, like from the get-go, I mean, from birth, there were some issues. Your story is heavy in essence off the top. But you've not lived your life that way. You and your wife and your kids have decided that you'll be fighters about it, because he is a tough little guy. I mean, for what he goes through. So just, for those who are just joining us or who have just started following Raw Mike Richards, why don't you explain from, I guess, literally infancy, what has happened with Jay?
Aiden.
Or sorry, Aiden.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So we noticed that, well, more so my wife. I mean, kudos to my wife. As a father, you're always in denial about something. No, my child's normal. Kids develop at different rates. My wife, and like I said, kudos to her, pushed the medical community to say, no, our son is not meeting the milestones when you're supposed to roll over, when you're supposed to sit up, when you're supposed to crawl. He wasn't meeting those milestones. And after lots of testing and MRIs, it was discovered that he was actually born with brain damage. Now, if there's a connection to the epilepsy, I really don't know. But through multiple tests, we've also found out he is autistic. And then on May 28th of 2015, when he was 2, I actually found him in his crib having a major seizure. And at that time, I had absolutely no idea what was going on. So knowing previously that he was born with brain damage, when I picked him up, his whole body went limp, and I immediately thought the worst. I started to panic. I had my cell phone right on my hip, and I was scrambling trying to find a phone. Like, you just lose it, you don't know what's going on. And we had paramedics there, thank God, really, really quickly. And they had told us that it was a seizure. And even then, you don't think, okay, is this epilepsy? But after being at the hospital for a couple of days and having EEGs done and several blood tests and testing, we met with neurologists at McMaster Children's Hospital in Hamilton, and they had told us that our son was diagnosed with epilepsy. And even then, it's like, okay, in my whole life, I've known one person who has epilepsy, so
Sure.
you just think it's associated to seizures. So immediately, I jumped to the internet and I came across Epilepsy Canada's page, because this little boy, he's sweet, but he's a tough little guy, and he's a fighter. And I mean, I gotta now fight for him. I'm his father. I got to do everything I can. So I got in contact with Gary here, and we met, and we put together Aiden's Drive to End Epilepsy, because there isn't anything I wouldn't do other than try and raise funds to find a cure. That little man means everything to me, and that's what I got to do. I got to do my damnedest to find a cure.
You're watching ronmikeRichards.com, either on the dedicated YouTube channel. We appreciate that. Subscribe when you can, or, of course, our website. And we are also putting up today the graphic as you're watching this, and it is World Purple Day. Text the word CURE to 30333 to donate either $10, $20, or $25 to Epilepsy Canada. Also, Russell, let's maybe find that graphic as well of Aiden's Drive, the golf tournament where we met everybody. It was at Hockley Valley, and it is a stunning location, isn't it?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
it's just so beautiful, and the ownership group there has done a wonderful job. We had just the greatest day. I mean, the weather was perfect. They got a gorgeous pool. Sure, Russell was swimming naked in it. Sure, people were frowning upon that kind of action, but it was still a great day. We're going to broadcast live from there again. So it is July the
10th.
July the 10th. So if you're watching this today and feel moved to do so, you can always contact me or Epilepsy Canada or Jay if you would like to sponsor a whole T-Box. If
Absolutely,
you'd
yeah.
like to just donate for the cause itself. If you
Spend the afternoon with us, right?
yeah. If you'd like to book a foursome, we're still doing that as well. And as we get closer, we're probably going to talk more about that, because it just is a marvelous day with some really wonderful, like, just amazing people. We had such a great time. And as I said, when you think about what Jay has gone through as a parent, you realize, as Gary was talking, that there are parents waking up today and if not finding something similar, at least the news that, either their child, wife, brother, son, I mean, their life is going to change from that moment on. And it becomes, I guess, a mission on, as they like to say now, the correct cocktail, the right balance of drugs. And, of course, a lot of it has to come with research, and you're not getting research if you're not coming up with money. So at the end of the day, this is why you do a show like this. This is why Dave and I become a part of it, because you realize if you want this thing to stop, then you got to get out the checkbook. It's the only way it's going to happen. And, people are working hard. They're doing their due diligence, but it's just so much to take in on what they got to do. I mean, you're talking about the human brain and that natural computer, and how do we alter medication, or you said so they actually, from the electrical impulses,
Right.
are thinking there's a way to somehow balance by getting a certain area of the brain, I suppose.
Yes, some of the scientists have said if we can detect when the early onset of a seizure is going to come, because it's electrical current, if we throw a different current at it, you can actually eradicate that, stop the seizure from happening. And a lot of research is taking place today in lots of places, but in Toronto notably, one researcher is going down that path.
Some of the issues that, if you're epileptic, that I saw this thing saying 10 things that epileptics know, and a lot of it is those triggering mechanisms, and some of them, you mentioned flashing lights. That connects to something in the brain that causes it, triggers?
Yes, it's a trigger. There are lots. There's flashing lights. There could be actually some people with epilepsy can't go to a three-dimensional movie. The dimensions throw...
With the equilibrium, I guess, to a degree, right?
Correct. And so there are a number of triggers, and each person has its own trigger. So once you know, you're very careful about where you go and what you do, and you have to manage your life differently.
Lack of sleep is also one.
Sleep is a huge
Yeah.
one. Proper sleep, lots of sleep, eating properly, trying to stay fit. Those are all things that help. But sleep is a really, really important one. So most need to have 8 hours of solid sleep and more if they can.
What other things that people would, because maybe they're like you were, and so they might have gone years kind of hiding when certain things happen, but maybe it's a trigger mechanism that they're not aware that that's what it is. What else could they look for?
Well, the problem is I had a seizure and I didn't know it was a seizure.
Right.
So I thought I'd fainted. So I didn't feel the effects of it. I simply was on the floor looking at the carpet and knowing that I'm not supposed to be here. It wasn't a Saturday night, so
Right,
it was
right.
in the morning. And so you say, okay, something happened. So then you have to go. I didn't remember what happened. And then, so the next time, the onset, I felt the same thing. So I had this dream. So it's important to report those things to your doctor, to be able to describe them, how you're feeling. And then it's also the after effect. So the after effect for me is that my body felt punished. And I then went to sleep for about 12 to 14 hours. So my body was exhausted. So that's not normal from someone fainting. So it's okay. So my body was really affected by this event. So it's checking with your physician, checking with your family, whoever you're with, and reporting to them what happened.
I was going to ask. So today, World Purple Day, is this is when it says World Purple Day, this is going on worldwide right now, or is this mainly focused in our country? Considering that, based on other charities, this is relatively small, and that's why we have to build this up to get it well noticed. And it's good that they're having a day like today on World Purple Day.
I think we need to do a shout out to Cassidy Megan from Nova Scotia.
Okay.
She was a young student, and she was epileptic, and she actually in 2008 on March 26th started Purple Day.
Oh, fantastic!
That's
okay,
incredible.
so there is a good.
Yeah.
It's a short history too.
It sure is, and it was started by Cassidy Megan, and so she recognized it and put up Purple Day, and then the world has recognized it. The Canadian government, I think, in 2012, recognized the month of March. So now in Canada, March is Epilepsy Awareness Month, and then this day is dedicated through Cassidy's efforts in Nova Scotia as Purple Day, and now International World Purple Day.
As gentlemen, and not only you guys, but your families, now having to live through this and fundraise and talk to people like us, do you feel any sort of momentum gaining as far as more and more people are aware of it? Because you bring it up, and it wasn't too long ago that she came up with this date, and it wasn't too long ago that the government finally recognized March as the month. Do you feel any of the momentum? Is it building, considering where it was prior to?
Well, I think so. I mean, you can talk to Gary, but I'm a pretty vocal guy. He'll tell you right away. I get on all of the. I mean, and you guys see, I get on all the social media avenues, and I go out there and tell my story. And like I said before, prior to this happening, prior to me talking, I only knew one person my entire life in 38 years who had epilepsy, and since I've started talking, I know hundreds and hundreds of people, because
that's what I'm talking about.
People do
Exactly,
keep it inside because they don't want to talk about it for fear of their job or their license or being outed socially. But I want to bring awareness out to everybody. I want everybody to know about this so that we can continue to push forward and try and find that cure.
Well, sharing is the way to go. To be public about things that your gut might be telling you just keep it to yourself, blah blah blah. Well, if we all did that, we'd get nowhere. I mean, you really would get nowhere. So,
Absolutely.
When you saw Brent Hundley's story, as we brought both Gary and Jay in, that was very moving about his sister. And again the social aspects of it. He talks in that at the beginning of that piece about how people would, other kids would laugh at his sister when it would happen. I mean, you can see it happening. It's a horrible thing, but by him sharing it, and of course John Ryan, the punter, he he gave away those Seahawk
cleats
there.
yeah.
It was like the $10,000 or whatever he got, or $20,000 or whatever they were looking for.
It was a couple $1,000 US, so we exchanged.
No,
that. It was
well,
great.
maybe in
US, so
Canadian
that's
it's
the
10,000.
equivalent. Yeah, exactly.
There
But
you go.
those are the kinds of things that need to be done, and I think the more that you're vocal and public about it, I mean, the better chance you have of filtering that money back again to research, because that's how it works.
And I got, again, to Jay's, we started our campaign in around 2010-11, and wanted to tell people stories. And one of the first that came forward was a young girl from Halliburton, Katie Woodstrup, and it resulted in us working with the Woodstrup family to create Katie's Run in Halliburton. And then from there, Jay came forward, so we wanted everyone to tell their story. So today we have other people that have come forward, and Leonard Allen recently just joined us in terms of fundraising event, and Leonard has now put together a team of 12 to 14 climbers who are going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Oh, wow.
And Leonard's story was he lost his sister to SUDEP 25 years ago.
Wow.
And in December, I was with Leonard and his dad at the CAW Auxiliary Women's Meeting in Oshawa. And we were doing a presentation about raising money for Kim's Climb, which is the climb's called. And Ron spoke. Leonard's dad, Ron spoke, and he got all choked up. So this is 25 years after the death of his daughter, and still he was choked up about the memory of her passing. And and so proud that Leonard was coming forward to do this event. But Jay's event last year has really helped drive other events. Michelle's Gala in Gravenhurst. Again, Michelle's died of SUDEP 10 years ago, and her sister Caitlin wanted to do something, and so the Reed family has now put together a gala in Gravenhurst. And again, last year we raised $20,000 at Michelle's Gala. Fantastic event.
Yeah.
So these things are happening by grassroots, by people like Jay, people like Michelle, people like Leonard, Caitlin Reed, people who want to do something. And we're really excited about that.
Well, look, we're glad you guys came in today, because as it is close to our hearts, and we were always thinking about Jay and Aidan and just what they go through on a daily basis. And I think that's the one thing that anyone who's been a parent understands, that the emotional fatigue, how spiritually almost that it just sucks the life out of you, and there's a fear to it. I think but you've managed to, I can't say be fearless, but how would you describe your attitude towards what goes through your son?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think I've slept well in 2.5 years ever since he was diagnosed. Anytime there is a movement throughout the night, you just kind of spark up and you wonder, okay, is he having a seizure? He normally has them, throughout the night or first thing in the morning. And the unfortunate circumstance with Aidan is he's developmentally delayed, so he can't tell us
Right.
that he's going to have a seizure. He doesn't know that this is something that is coming on. We think that he's starting to grasp it, but he's still not able to tell us. So we just continue to fight. We've had to make adjustments in our life. I put a lot of dedication towards this event, so it takes a little bit of time away from home. And I mean, I have a job on top of that, plus my family. So life is very, very busy, but we got to keep plugging away. We got to keep fighting. The adjustments that we've made, we were about to go on a family vacation on March break, and I was about to book the resort, and we had gotten to the point where we had been able to stop Aidan's grand mal seizures with a certain medication. A week before I was about to book the vacation, he had one and we couldn't stop it. So for the first time in many, many years, we had separate vacations just because I could not risk having my son 35,000 feet in the air or in Mexico having a seizure that I can't stop. Yeah. So, you make these little adjustments, and maybe we'll get to that point. We experiment constantly with medication. It's probably not easy on his body, which is why we need to find that cure. We just have to keep on pushing forward.
So once again, you can help out today on World Purple Day by texting the word CURE to 30 333, so that's 30333 to donate either $10, $20, $25 to Epilepsy Canada, because it does help. Like, I mean, from that moment that you know that you're putting that money in there, it's going to research for a cure, or at least, you know, to further a comfort level, so people can have a relatively normal life, which obviously you can understand for Jay that right now that seems probably almost like a fantasy, does it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't, because we have a chance to do something, and it starts by just donating that money. So if you want to do that, and of course, as we mentioned beforehand, the golf tournament, which is a fun day at Hockley Valley, there's a winery there. I mean, what do you want?
I think there's a couple of them.
They have their own winery. It's owned by Italians. Come on, andiamo, scappa, let's go. They also have the beautiful pool in which, nude Russell images of that's almost like Splash for some people when they saw that. No. Actually said no one ever. But we have a great day, and it's for a great cause. So if you want to do that, that's also the graphics up there. You can get a hold of Jay or myself. I know some people have tried to do that this year, and as we get closer to it, we'll have some more details. But if you want to book a foursome, we'd appreciate that. So once again, World Purple Day. Do what you can, because it is worth it, and you are changing people's lives. So, gentlemen, thanks so much for coming in, Jay. And there's Gary, who...
Thank you so much, as always.
Thanks,
We really appreciate it,
Yeah.
guys.
Seeing you guys. Thanks again.
Just wonderful.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.